Hello, Hasti. Thank you so much for joining me on the video call today and to share your insights about the haptics community and your work and your perspectives on how we have progressed as a community. To begin with, I'd like to ask you to perhaps name three key scientific or engineering breakthroughs in haptics over the past 2 decades.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for doing this, Hank. I think it's very valuable for the community. I think it's hard to select just a few key innovations, but I think I can tell you what's been the most fascinating to me. I think the high fidelity haptic renderings, for example, for texture simulations, let's record data recordings from real world. I think to me is one of the exciting, fascinating sort of like innovations in the field. I think on the perception side, I'm personally finding it very interesting and fascinating, the work that's done to find sort of like finding the relationship between pleasant touch and sort of like see tactile appearance is super fascinating. And I think I was also thinking about on the hardware side, which there's been so many innovations there. Like over the past 2 decades, to me, like the growth and diversity of wearable haptic devices is particularly interesting, and their availability to people to prototype them easily for an application. So that's, I think those are the three most, and I tried to select one from each of the like high level areas in haptics.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, I know it's hard. If we move to the commercial world, what products come to your mind where like haptics plays a critical role?
Yeah, I think to me, the mobile devices is sort of like have had the biggest impact. It's now, I think, even if you want to tell to a kid what is haptics, it's very easy to say sort of like vibration from your phone. I think similarly, VR controllers and gaming devices have had, I think now a lot of people, ordinary people, understand what haptics is. I would say that has also like a downside to it, because a lot of times these devices play simple buzz sensations. So then at the same time that we say, oh, think about the vibration on your mobile phone, it's also hard to get away from the negative impression that it might cause, that it's just that simple buzz that I maybe deactivate on my phone. So but I think that's been, I guess, like the most versatile in my opinion, and also it provides a shared platform for like haptics and also, for example, HCI community to develop applications on.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, haptics is so much more than just vibration, but very few devices can incorporate force. Yeah.
I think one more thing I would say is that, of course, haptics is very important in sort of like robotic manipulation, telerobotics, etc. But when I was thinking about this, I was thinking something that's like many people have access to, right? And it basically has that larger scale impact.
So looking to the future, what excites you in haptics?
I think that's kind of related to the previous question, because I think I'm most excited about going beyond like the simple, more mechanistic haptic sensations into rich, expressive, versatile haptic experiences. And I think there is a lot of nice work going on, sort of like using multiple dimensions of haptics, multiple modalities, combining them together. I'm also personally very excited about the potential that advances in, for example, machine learning or natural language processing have to really enable us to create much richer, more expressive haptic sensations. Because I mean, real world, the haptic sensations in real world are very rich, right? Like very complex sensations. And I think there is a lot of room. And so that excites me the most.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what challenges do you see ahead of us to achieve more rich, nuanced haptic sensations?
Yeah, I think so. To me, one of the there are multiple challenges. One of them is that the sort of like diversity of haptic hardware is good, but at the same time, there is so much variation in haptic hardware and actuators, and all of them sort of like feel like islands of devices that each do sort of like a narrower. They're good at sort of like a narrower range of sensations. So having sort of like devices and actuators that are sort of like compact and maybe low power, but also versatile in terms of what the sensations they can create. I think similarly, sort of like shared resources for the haptic community is very important. And so I guess right now, I think there is a lot of innovations going on, but very little is sort of like, we have very little open. A lot of data sets are not shared, right? A lot of code is not shared. So replicating, etc., all of that is difficult or challenges. And then I think the other thing that to me is super important is the demonstrating the value of haptics beyond sort of like that novelty effect and sort of like nice to have feature, right? Like how can we really demonstrate that the value of haptics, which I think there is a lot of value, but it's very hard right now to actually quantify it.
Yeah, well said. Thank you. Thank you. So if we were to prioritize what is most needed, in your opinion, so I'm thinking like sensors, actuators, form factors, killer app, that kind of thing. How would you prioritize the need for the community and for the field to keep growing?
Yeah, I mean, I think my answer to this is kind of shared with the previous one, which is this low cost, compact, versatile haptic actuators maybe. And then I think also maybe the standards or established metrics for sort of like assessing or quantifying the value of haptics is very important. And I think also really going back to the advances in machine learning, for example, or natural language processing, to sort of like also push or sort of like have synergy with haptics, large scale data sets for haptic community. I think in robotics, there has been some efforts across multiple universities trying to collect data sets, large data sets, which I think would be very, given the diversity of haptic hardware, which is also there is diversity in robots, right? So it's nice to be able to do such kinds of things for the community.
Yeah. So you mentioned a lot of adjacent fields, perception, robotics, and HCI. How do you see us keep growing our community since we have so many overlap, we're so multidisciplinary?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So I guess like two things. One thing to me is further opening up the field of haptics, or I don't know, like democratizing the field, making it much easier for people to build haptic hardware or access data, software, etc. Right? So, as I said, open sourcing these resources is, I think, an important part. Yeah, I think the other aspect to me is the, what do you call it? Like, I feel this about myself, but I think maybe a bit more broadly would apply to other haptic researchers, is that sort of like a bit going out of our comfort zone to basically publish Actually, can I start again on this question? You remember there was something that I wanted to say. Okay, so I think there are two things that can, in my opinion, can help. One is opening up the field of haptics or democratizing the field of haptics more through like open source hardware, data sets, codes, etc., and also educational resources for people from outside the field to learn about haptics. And I think, for example, with Haptipedia and Learn Haptics, that was our motivation, right? To open it up to a lot more people who maybe in the field of HCI or in other adjacent fields to be able to learn about haptics, apply it to their work. And there is a lot more opportunity beyond that, right? So there is like opportunities to have sort of in a way, I don't know, repositories or crowdsourced repositories or online websites where all these sort of like educational content, but there is a lot of them, right? But then to have all of them in the same place and to have data sets in the same place, right? So that people from other fields can basically lowering the threshold for entering to haptics. And then on the other hand, I feel like, again, this applies to myself, but maybe to others as well, is a bit going beyond our comfort zone in terms of where we publish. So for example, I think haptics researchers are now doing very well in terms of publishing, for example, in HCI venues or in robotics venues. But for example, when you look at some of more AI, I guess like computer vision, natural language processing domains, which attract a lot of young researchers, right? There's very little from the haptics community published there. And I think that's another way to sort of like expose others to haptics and attract them. So to me, those are the two areas.
Good point, good point. What advice would you give to newcomers into our field?
Yeah, good question. I don't know. I think when I sort of like talk about haptics in my undergrad class, the students are very interested in the hardware, cool hardware. But I think to me, one advice that I have, or one thing that that's important, is that haptics is much beyond. It's not only the technology, right? It's much beyond sort of like the hardware side of it. Even with simple hardware, there's so much you can do in terms of like perception, interaction design, and that has a lot of impact in the end experience of it. Actually, I was thinking about it. I did my whole PhD thesis with one vibration actuator. So there's a lot of room even with one like sort of like simple hardware to look at interaction design, perception side of haptics. So that's, I think, one aspect. And the other one is sort of like kind of goes back to what I said before, that being open to sort of like cross disciplinary boundaries. I think haptics researchers are very good at this. I think haptics is very interdisciplinary compared to many other fields, but I feel like we still need to do more. I think there are still areas that we can reach, and so those are my two comments.
Yeah, thank